My name is Sarah Griffin. I'm a registered dietitian in Denver, Colorado. I'm also a really experienced educator. I've done a fellowship in clinical nutrition at Duke University, and I hold 2 CNSC credentials, most recently in September 2024. I also hold the ASPEN American Society of Healthcare Pharmacists Nutrition Support Certificate. And I'm here to tell you why my study guide sold out in 6 weeks. So this is my CNSC exam study guide. It's amazing. It's awesome. It's 70 pages long. It's all beautifully bound with nice thick paper. I've got tables in here. I've got all sorts of tips and tricks so that you can pass your CNSC exam. There is no official study guide for this exam, and there's a lot of confusion and frustration out there because students do not know how to prepare. There are a lot of old resources available. If you Google this, you will find this exam secret guide on Amazon. There is some good information here, but if you look at the copyright date, this has not been republished since 2017, and the exam has changed drastically. So it's changed a lot since 2017, and within the last 2 years, the exam has changed even more. So it is not the same exam as it was in 2017. So I do not think that that's sufficient to prepare. You really need somebody who's taken their exam recently, who has gone in there and utilized a really good resource so that you can be confident that you're prepared and you don't have to spend hundreds and hundreds of hours reading through the ASPEN core. So the CNSC exam study guide that I've created contains several different sections of content. First of all, there's clinical nutrition basics. You can think of this as a primer. If you're able to understand the vast majority of this information, it's a good sign that you can start studying for the exam. If you haven't understood every little piece of my clinical nutrition basics, that's okay. You can still jump into studying, but a lot of my students will ask me, how will I know when I'm ready? And I usually just tell them, review the first few pages of my study guide, and that will help you really understand whether you might be prepared or not. So you can take a quick look on the screen here and kind of understand, oh yeah, I am pretty familiar with these things. I think that, I've worked in nutrition support for maybe 2 years at the lowest amount of time, and I'm really ready to study for this. So that can give you a good primer to understand whether this is an exam that you really want to jump into for this next exam session. My study guide also includes a lot of pediatric notes. So this was my biggest stumbling block when I took the exam both times, and seems to be one of the biggest areas of concern for CNSC students. If you don't work in pediatric nutrition support, which it's a niche of a niche, so there's a high likelihood that you don't work in pediatric nutrition support. And if you don't, like myself, you don't know how to study for this. And you're not going to buy the 3-inch ASPEN Pediatric Nutrition Support curriculum and read through that in addition to the 3-inch thick adult nutrition support core curriculum. That would be bananas. The adult nutrition support core curriculum from ASPEN, the 3rd edition, is the Bible for this exam. So you really want a copy of the ASPEN Adult Nutrition Support Core Curriculum 3rd edition to study for the spring and fall 2025 exams. Okay, so I've got my pediatric notes. I've really distilled them down over the years into just what you need to know, because there's so much pediatric information that I could put in the study guide. But my students had said they really just want the need to know, right? There could be 50 pages or 60 pages of pediatric information alone, but what is actually relevant for the exam so that you don't have to waste your time memorizing things that don't matter. Next, we have a review of various disease states. I've included almost every major disease state that you can think of, in addition to disease state calorie needs and protein needs for every single disease state. So it's a great review. It's probably going to be a review for most of you, but if you don't typically see a lot of liver disease or renal patients or critically ill patients, it'll be really important because I've included all of this information for you in the study guide. This section is really thick. It's like 10 pages long, all of the review of different disease states and then the nutrition and calorie needs for each disease state. So that's going to be a key portion of this study guide where you don't have to go filtering through the ASPEN core to find every single disease state. I've got it all here laid out in a really easy to understand format. I also have acid-base balance, which is a notoriously difficult part of nutrition support. I've really, again, distilled that all, so it's like a good primer for you. If you don't understand acid-base balance very well, or you don't know what I'm talking about, I've included exactly what you need to know, what's relevant for the CNSC exam. And again, I was in the exam room less than 6 months ago, and so I can tell you exactly what's on this exam, what you need to know for this particular exam. I haven't taken my exam like 6 years ago or 7 years ago, because that information is going to be irrelevant now because the exam changes so much. So because I've been in the exam room so recently, I know that I walked into the exam with my study guide and I walked out and passed that exam in September. So that was my first retake, or my first recert rather. So I had taken it 5 years earlier and then I did my recert in 2024. I've also included micronutrients, which is a big section. So every single micronutrient that you can think of, different lab values to check, what the RDA is, different food nutrient interactions with that particular nutrient. Those are really, really important because there's a lot of kind of minutia or niche of micronutrient assessment and evaluation on the CNSC exam. And then kind of the boring but essential bits at the end. There's process management, there's professional practice, there's ethics in nutrition, there's home nutrition support. And I don't mean to say that home nutrition support is boring by any means. It's super important. But if you don't work in that world, it's a lot of regulations and federal and local and state rules, Medicaid and Medicare coverage. And you need to be able to understand that, especially if you don't work in home nutrition support. How are you going to know all of that? So I've written it all down for you. And then when you purchase my study guide, you get unlimited access to 4 different slide decks from Quizlet. I have said 3 in the past, but I've added a 4th one recently. So there's 4 Quizlet slide decks with over 300 flashcards. And this is really how you drill in those specific guidelines, all of the numbers, all of the terms, all of the kind of little things that you need to have memorized for this exam are in my Quizlet flashcards.